Welcome back to season 4 of Comic Book Nation, the one show that covers all things geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com, which also covers all things geek culture. I am your host, Kofi Outlaw, and I'm finally back. It's been a minute, guys, but I'm back in the saddle here. So what's up? Welcome back to me, and of course, who's been holding it down here like a steady hand on the wheel is my co-host, Janelle Wheeler.
What's up, everybody?
And Matt Aguilar's taking some, well-deserved time off. Matt has been crazy just holding down the helm while I've been scrambling at Comic-Con and doing other stuff. So he's taking some time off, but what a week he chose to be off. Oh, man. Poor Matt. But we're taking his place, of course. Somebody who always is here to help steady the wheel. And the man, because, if we get out of line, he's got to get everything back in line. It's Jim Viscardi, who's responsible for this whole mess.
That's true. This is all my fault. I'm sorry.
So today we got a lot to talk about. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to any news lately, but a couple things have been happening. And on the DC side of things, last week we were all kind of talking about Marvel this and Marvel that, and, what big things came out of Comic-Con and what will the MCU future be like. And DC this week said, you know what, guys?
we'll tell you what that future looks like.
Yeah, we ain't got it. So we ain't got it. They just... it's a different day at DC. Zaslav is he's playing a different kind of game. He just was like, look, we don't got it, but we're going to get it. See you in 10 years. Here's the new DC plan. So in that wake of that, we had a lot of things. DC Projekt kind of get the axe.
I made a tweet earlier that was basically like, this is DC's third 10-year plan in like a 6-year span.
That's what I thought.
They've had a few of them. Which is right because there was the initial Snyder one.
Yeah, I did a post
Snyder.
It went before that. I did a tweet too that was kind of reflecting on how many times in my career, and I've been doing this now 13 years, like alone in my career. How many times have I done DC Universe, new plans revealed, all kinds of excitement, editorials that go to DC, like falls apart, like everything is canceled, need new plan. How to fix, I've written like 5 different versions of how to fix the DCE movie universe. Like I've been like, and it goes all the way back to the late 2000s with Justice League Mortal and George Miller getting scrapped when it was about to launch a universe. Then Nolan and Snyder were going to be the big architects of a big new one, but that got scrapped. Then Snyder was going to take it all himself and make a whole new thing. We laid out a whole plan for that. We're going to get a Green Lantern Flash movie and all this other stuff. Then that got scrapped. And then then Walter Hamada comes in. We were going to do this new kind of multiverse approach we've been talking about, where we're going to utilize streaming and theaters and build it all together and flesh out these universes, and the Batman's getting series and Batgirl and Keaton and da-da-da. And now here we are. So let's talk about where we are now, guys. We've been where we've been, but let's talk about where we are now. So obviously, the big thing that's hurting Matt's heart now and wherever he is, of course, the cancellation of Batgirl. Batgirl was the first big thing to set this snowball rolling this week. It got the axe. Leslie Grace was going to be our new Batgirl. They shot this movie. It was $90 million. It was in the can. Michael Keaton was going to appear in it. We have all these facts now about what was going to happen. And a lot of this is just, it is a mess that was caused by kind of COVID, the backup from the pandemic, having to kind of, I don't think we all understood. I know we were all up here. If you guys want a funny thing, go back and listen to this year's episode earlier this season of Will DC or Marvel have the better year in 2022 that we did at the beginning of the year. If you want some comedy, go back and listen to that now.
Have faith.
I don't think we all understood just how much the poop had hit the fan when they had to reschedule Aquaman and the Flash. Like, we knew Flash was pivotal and his place was pivotal, but I don't think we understood, the ramifications of everything that has happened and that we now know happened when that happened. So, yeah, it's been kind of wild. And, I think I was checking with Peter. Yes, Matt Aguilar isn't here, but we now have the Comic Book Nation YouTube channel, guys. So shout out to all our people watching on Twitch. But if you guys want to start making the transition to YouTube, we're also going to be having additional content and in addition to the show over there. And here's one of the first pieces. So Matt Aguilar isn't here, but he is here in spirit and
movie
in
and TV universe.
Some of that was very much with Batgirl. So I see Peter's already launching it in. But here's Matt Aguilar talking about what happened with Batgirl and the movie getting canceled. So Matt, take it away.
DC's movie and TV universe was on the verge of a breakout year at the start of 2022, but ever since it's been setback after setback. And while some of that was very much out of DC's control, that was not the case all across the board. That includes the most recent shockwave from Warner Brothers Discovery that Leslie Grace's Batgirl movie is indefinitely shelved and will not see any sort of release. That kind of begs the question, what on earth happened with DC's Batgirl movie and why is it such a bad look? Well, let's answer that, shall we? Warner Brothers is now part of Discovery. With that acquisition, there have been some changes in focus and strategy. Before Discovery's David Zaslav was at the wheel, WB and DC were focusing on a 1-2 punch of theatrical and streaming. And that explains why DC had originally pitched Batgirl and Blue Beetle as HBO Max only releases. That has now shifted, as by all accounts, Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery now wants to prioritize theatrical and find ways to bring down its $3 billion in debt across all of its divisions. Blue Beetle was previously changed from a streaming-only release to a theatrical one as well, so some assumed Batgirl would also receive a theatrical upgrade. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers Discovery has now revealed that despite being completely done and in post-production, that film is canceled. It is also unlikely we'll see it moved anywhere else or given a different style of release, as according to reports, a purchase accounting maneuver allows Warner Brothers Discovery to not carry the loss on its books, but needs to be used by mid-August, and that explains why it's canceling Batgirl now. Warner Brothers Discovery did release a statement on the matter, saying that the decision to cancel Batgirl did not reflect on Leslie Grace, her performance, or the work Adil and Bilal did, and Warner Brothers Discovery hopes to collaborate with them in the future. Well, here's the problem with that. That might be true, but you just wrote off a $90 million movie that was already done, featuring one of your most popular Bat characters with a woman person of color in the starring role. Meanwhile, you have a movie that has a white lead that is literally swimming in controversy and allegations, and that movie is still being tracked to theaters. Sure, it fits within your theater-centric strategy, but overall it's incredibly problematic and shows what you are willing to overlook just because it fits within your grand business vision. Plus, Batgirl was all but finished and would have bolstered your still growing streaming service. So unless Zaslav and company are going to just write off all of the progress they've made with their streaming platform in HBO Max to Netflix or whoever else wants to come into that territory, that is going to still need content. If Batgirl were in the planning stages, I totally get the pivot. And speaking of that sort of pivot, things don't look great for that Green Lantern HBO Max series either. But here it just seems like a tone-deaf move for short-term gain. Meanwhile, Flash, which has cost far more and will cost an even grander sum once marketing is factored in, is still on track to release. And that's not even taking into account any reshoots or recastings that could raise the budget. Also, how you're going to market that thing is just beyond me. Even from a character-specific viewpoint, Batgirl is one of the most popular characters in DC's catalog, and opens up DC's rather narrow movie universe to a whole new demographic, while Flash just caters to those who are already in the building. Look, it's not my money. I will not be on the soapbox telling people how to spend theirs. I get it. That said, I'm just calling it like I see it. As of right now, it's an incredibly bad look for Batgirl to get thrown to the side, while another project that should have been shelved a while ago continues to get more and more chances. Batgirl, Leslie Grace, Adil and Bilal, and the entire team behind the film deserve far better. So, what do you think about the shelving of the Batgirl movie? Let us know in the comments, or as always, you can talk all things DC and comics with me on Twitter at MattAguilarCB. You can also catch all of our content right here on Comic Book Nation. Peace.
Oh,
that
Kofi
was
forgot
so
to unmute
good.
his mic again. But yes,
thank you, Matt.
That was look.
Yeah, I said Matt did it. He's not here, but he is here, still crushing it.
That's right.
Nonetheless. Yeah, so all of our Twitch fans, yeah, still be on Twitch. We love our Twitch stream. No problems with Twitch, but I'm just letting you know we're going to be putting content like that up on our Comic Book Nation YouTube page, so don't forget to subscribe there as well, so you know, because we have a lot more to say than we have time to say sometimes in this show, and we want to talk to you guys more. But thanks to Matt for that, and to jump off of that, like, yeah, it is a weird thing. I agree with Matt on a lot of things, but I understand the Flashpoint. No pun intended, because I think it's come out since then, and even probably since he's worked on the video, we've had even more kind of things come out. But Warner Brothers yesterday confirmed they are still releasing it, and that's because that was supposed to be this whole kind of universe reset for them. this is the key to their soft reboot and making all these new Universal changes. So they have to still release that film. For my money, I don't think we're going to see Ezra Miller after that. I think this resets a new Barry Allen. I think the only survivors are confirmed are going to be Momoa and Gal Gadot. And maybe, I don't know, Ben Affleck could just be doing them a favor. He's coming back because Keaton was supposed to be the Nick Fury in Batgirl. And after Flash, he was supposed to start Nick Fury in it, show up at Batgirl and be like, oh, now I'm in this universe. Like, hi, I'm Batman. And then he was going to show up in Aquaman and be like, whoa, you're this Batman now. And then that was going to be a whole thing. But I think they're cutting that all out. I know Ben Affleck's there because now Aquaman comes first. So he still needs to be the Batman for that time before the Flash could reset that. But I don't know. I feel like Zaslav is going with like big movie stars, big movies kind of approach to this. So I don't know if Ben Affleck couldn't be lured back into this or not, but that's just all speculation. As for what else is getting cut, like, I mean, what do we think is getting an axe next?
Well, I mean, there's no way that Green
Wonder
Lantern
Twins
show,
is dead, right?
Yeah, that Green Lantern show does not show that just does not make
that's probably dead, right?
It's, I mean, to be fair, in all honesty, right, like that's a franchise that I think is ripe for a movie reboot, right? And hopefully, you know, in a perfect world, like I would love to see a Green Lantern movie starring like either Jessica Cruz or Simon Baz or the two of them. And I think like that that's the Green Lantern movie we need. I don't think and I think it's those two characters in particular are so different from the what we got with, you know, Hal Jordan in the Ryan Reynolds film and things like that. That like I think it's a good place to kind of to do that. But I think that's a movie that has to be a movie because of budget reasons, right? Like you don't want to see Green Lantern stuff you know, on a TV budget. And I mean, look, it sounds like Jason Clarke would have spent movie money on a Green Lantern show, but probably not. And so like that's where it needs that. But I think that the interesting thing that comes out of this entire discourse where everyone is just like, DC needs a Kevin Feige. DC needs a Kevin Feige. And honestly, I don't think it does. Russ Burlingame on the site is posting a story later today, posted a great thread on Twitter last night that was basically along the lines of DC heroes are gods. They are not the Marvel relatable kind of hero. And I think every time DC tries to make their heroes more relatable, they find themselves stuck in this position, right? And so you need more auteur kind of directors and creatives to bring to the table here to do these movies. And I think we got that right with, you know, James Gunn and you know, even, you know, going all the way back to Tim Burton and Richard Donner, and look, even Zack Snyder to an extent, right? Like Zack Snyder, auteur director, probably just came in at the wrong period of time, right? Like Zack Snyder comes in at a time where they're trying to do the Marvel method, and it just does not work. DC will not beat Marvel if they try and do the Marvel game. And I think like that's going to be the biggest key to success. They have shown that they can do weird really well. Some of DC's best comics right now, right? Like Tom King's Mr. Miracle is a perfect example. A lot of the stuff coming out of the Black Label are all great kind of one and done stuff. I understand the need for people to want a universe, and I think there's a way to do it, but I don't think it's trying to do the Kevin Feige stuff, especially now that they're so far ahead, and to have to start from scratch, right, you know, all over again. And right now just doesn't feel like the right thing to do. Let them do more things like Doom Patrol or you know,
I gotta say I hard disagree with you on this.
Man.
I think when people say they need a Kevin Feige, and I think this is more true of DC than Marvel ever was, I think a Kevin Feige, and people, we just throw that term around now. It's become one of those things. But like what a Feige is a guy who is uniquely there because he understands what it's like to be like the creative underling
Yep.
and to be in the position of the pressured executive. And he has found a way to synthesize those two things into somebody who is like what a producer was always supposed to be, which is the wedge between executives and creatives who knows how to move between those worlds and coordinate them without them kind of clashing. And DC needs that, because the major problem with DC is Warner Brothers and the Warner Brothers culture. Like Warner Brothers it owns all of DC. It always has. And the executive culture there has been a decade, at least for the decade plus I've been doing this, has been nothing but a shark, lion, whatever, aggressive animal pit you want to imagine, that they just eat each other all the time. They literally sabotage. They eat each other, whether it's Roven and Jeff Johns and then Hamada and all these other people we know were in the background. Like, nobody actually supports everybody and does this. They kind of meddle with things, for better or for worse.
The tough part is, I don't even know who you
the Snyderverse. No, I don't know who can do that too. Like, I don't know who has the power to Kevin Feige did it by proving concept first and then getting that confidence behind him. I don't know who you put in there now.
I mean, because it's certainly not like everyone
stand up to all like a Zaslav and handle somebody like a Zack Snyder, for just an example. I'm not saying Snyder's coming back. Everybody chill. But I'm just saying, like,
he's not.
The Snyder kind of level vision and the Zaslav level kind of executive demands. I don't know who you put in there.
So
An interesting point in the comment, or in the comments, Bill says the Batgirl movie should have been a series all along, and Zack Snyder should have been DC's Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
I mean,
I don't know. I'm going down a little further too, and this has been brought up and kind of suggested, is I think the only person you do have is The Rock. And The Rock might be the only one who can do this, because he's just everybody's gonna respect The Rock, right? And The Rock knows what he's doing, and The Rock if there's nothing else that Dwayne The Rock Johnson knows, it is how to get a project off, how to get it in the can, and how to get it sold.
And how to give the audience what they want.
Exactly.
The Dwayne is not, if one of his greatest strengths is he knows what an audience wants, and he will more often than not deliver. Here's the biggest. I think the idea of Dwayne kind of, with $7 and building out this, this universe, like, being the Kevin Feige-esque kind of person there is not a terrible idea. He said something in an interview he did with Brandon Davis that, like, he was joking about, like, the hierarchy of power is going to change in the DC universe, but also this movie is going to change the future of how DC movies are made, kind of thing, right? And almost that, like, he's kind of like setting himself up for that. The biggest difference between Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Feige is Kevin Feige is a tried and true Marvel Comics fan. That man knows his Marvel Comics. He knows the DNA of these characters that make it right. Dwayne, I'm sure, like, Dwayne is the kind of guy, he will do the homework. He will get there, but he definitely is going to need a number two kind of on his side to be the one who appreciates the universe and understands.
The Rock knows something more important. He knows what a global audience wants.
Yes, and absolutely.
And we've already done, like, how heavy DC lore can get, and that doesn't always sell. I love Batman vs Superman Ultimate Edition because of how much I feel of a massively intellectual deep dive it is into those characters, not for a global audience. And
right.
I can admit that, and it's okay to admit that, like, not necessarily a concept for a global audience. So I think The Rock knows that. And I think there's any number of great producers or other producers, comic or writers. If you find guys who are just really, or girls, people who are really right to just do the writing, a good writing team who knows the characters, you can find that. You can tap, and The Rock knows how to delegate. He knows how to find Jeff Johns or whoever he wants to, like, kind of be like, all right, how do I do this?
Please keep Jeff Johns away from all of this. But,
like, I'm just saying, that's just
the other interesting tidbit. During this entire conversation, there was one incredibly important DC name that has not come up a single time, and I think it goes to prove to either his lack of influence or just want to be there, and it's Jim Lee, right? Like, theoretically, this guy should be the one stepping up to say, hey, I've lived my entire life and career in this stuff. Hello, let me help. And he's nowhere to be found.
But there's, Jim Lee's not the guy. Like, there's so many people.
I'm not saying he's the guy, but he definitely should be a louder voice in the room. And it definitely seems like that's not the case.
Before that in line, there's so many people. Jay Olivia, people from the animation side who have been killing it for years.
I mean, yeah,
who have
Jay Olivia is great.
Who have made all these successful things on the animated form that people have said for years, we would love to just see those taken to the movies. Like, there's so many great Lauren Montgomery, like there's so many great people, Bruce Timm, there's so many people floating around DC in their other multimedia sides that have great ideas that you could tap.
But I think like just everyone you mentioned, like even including like Lauren Montgomery, right? Like these are creatives who are more auteurs than they are just kind of like, not a knock at the MCU, but more like they're not like MCU yes men and women, right? Where they break the mold a little bit yet. And I'd love to see any of them get involved, right? As directors or whatever. But again, right, like you do need someone to kind of keep all of the creative stuff just in line. Because like the diehard DC fans, these movies will live or die by, right, based on initial reception, is going to be how accurate-ish they are.
Yeah, I don't know about that because some of this stuff in DC is a mess. But
well,
in the midst of all this, what's crazy is, in the midst of all these cancellations and discussions, we also are confirming we are getting a Joker 2. So
we are getting a Joker 2.
Yeah. Janelle, like, how do you feel? Joker 2 is happening. Lady Gaga is in it. This is all real. So that is happening.
Yay, question mark. I'm still I'm excited about this, but I feel that announcement is not as it's not as exciting for me knowing that all of these other things are getting like canceled or, shut down. And that kind of sucks. Like it takes away from the hype for me. Like it's weird timing. Like everything's like all at once. And I don't know. I mean, I love Lady Gaga and I think she's going to do a great job, but I'm more bummed about Batgirl than I am excited about Joker.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a weird time. And I feel like DC was trying to balance things out by being like, hey, we're taking away a lot of your toys, but Joker too. But it's like, yeah, that's not quite the reaction you get when you tell me another Joker movie's coming. But first details are that it is said to take a place a lot inside, be set a lot of it inside of Arkham Asylum. Lady Gaga will be back and playing Harley Quinn character. And it's called Joker Folie à Deux, which is supposed to mean, a psychiatric psychosis shared by more than one person. We heard it originally would be a love story musical, between Joker and Harley, which could be interesting. But I think again, when I heard the first Joker and I heard the premise, I was like, okay, but I could see how this idea of a man reacting to this society that, that we're in could really be both a comic book movie and a great metaphor. And I thought it did an okay job getting there. But I could see how this could also be a very timely look about how one kind of, twisted mind state becomes something much bigger of a twisted mind state. And that would also be pretty timely. So I'm kind of interested, like I was in the first one.
Yeah.
What does Walter Hamada do? So, yes, DC, he's the president of DC Films. Warner Brothers
technically is their Kevin Feige, but not.
Yeah, he's technically their Kevin Feige, but more of an executive than a Feige. But he had some inspired ideas, like Hamada was going to come in and do this whole multiverse DC thing. Like we can have different projects and don't have to connect everything and, all that. So that was his approach. And he was also about the digital. He was also about going to streaming as well as in theater. So that's what he was all about. But,
here's a note about Hamada, because I know a lot of people could try and like tear this guy down a bit. And to be fair, he's made plenty of his own, missteps.
Oh, yeah.
During his tenure there, though, he made more money and spent less for Warner Brothers than any of his predecessors. And so like clearly the guy, had, some things right there. But at the same time, right, like I think he got caught up in a lot of just to his own fault, I'd imagine, a mess throughout the last couple of years, just like Kofi said, right? It was a freaking Shark Tank there. So, but again, right? Like it'll be interesting to see what a post Hamada DC Films studio looks like, because again, they're going to need to find someone.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, right now it just sounds like it's either going to be The Rock or Zaslav's going to be like, fine, I'll do it myself, like Thanos, and put on some like weird DC glove and just make it up. But yeah, R.I.P. Batgirl, R.I.P. Wonder Twins. I wouldn't hold on to Green Lantern too long. The Arrowverse looks like it's on the way out because Flash is going, and I don't think Superman and Lois or Stargirl are that safe. I wouldn't get too invested in any of those HBO Max series right now, like Titans, Doom Patrol.
Stop.
I've heard Harley Quinn might not even be safe.
No.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. That was so. There was a lot of speculation that HBO Max was going to go away, and then yesterday on the call, Zaslav was basically like, "No, we're spending a bunch more money on HBO Max, even though we are going to combine it with Discovery Plus." I don't like that whole like combined mega streaming service is going to be. I'm already dreading trying to navigate through it because neither of them have good navigation, and so it's going to be
good point.
I was trying to spend like 5 minutes just trying to switch profiles on HBO Max yesterday.
But again, right, like they may, like I can't imagine that like Doom Patrol is in a place where they could probably just stop, right? Like I don't think they would go ahead and invest.
I think Titans
they are
legitimate.
They're legitimately in the middle of filming another season of Titans. I almost am waiting for the announcement to come out that just said, "All right, everyone go home. It's done." Right?
Stop it.
That I mean, like I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. Harley Quinn, I've got to like. It's an animated show. It is such a hit for them. I've got to imagine that of all the shows, that is safe. Everything else,
I don't buy it. I think this guy is thinking anything too weird or complex just feels like it's not.
But I can't imagine it. In the Harley Quinn has to be the most cost-effective one for them to make.
But animation also requires those productions, the animators, like
right.
How much are you paying Kaylee Kuko and all those now season per season? That's like you already have the block of content there. Like it's one of those things you can do a revival in 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, or specials, or I wouldn't be surprised if they just go to like, steal some of the South Park model and just do, Harley Quinn specials, like features that you just pay for and get returns on. So we'll see. All right, we got to finish up a little bit of this segment on the Marvel side. So we're talking about, I mean, it's DC got the focus this week, but this has been a week of everybody kind of revealing their cards, saying we have to rethink some things. It happened on the Marvel Disney side as well, as we've just learned that Disney Plus has had to kind of reapproach how it's going to release stuff. And they made some pretty clear steps when you look at the whole big picture of making sure that She-Hulk and Andor don't kind of eat each other. I think even though you don't hear it like reported that much, or people are just kind of focusing on the positives, Miss Marvel did get eaten, if you do some research, kind of eaten up in the whole kind of ratings department. And people are speculating how much that had to do with it, kind of them trying to do this concurrent, like running Obi-Wan with Miss Marvel, and did one eat the other, or do you have better chances by just releasing them isolated from each other and forcing everybody to be like, this is the only content on Disney Plus you can watch this week. So I think we're going back to that model because Andor got pushed back into September 21st. She-Hulk is now moving to a different day. It's going to be coming on Thursdays. And I think they're doing this to give each show kind of their best chance to really connect and succeed ratings wise. So that's what's happening there. But we got new kind of trailers. She-Hulk is putting out a lot of stuff, promo stuff, to get people invested.
Honestly,
look, it looks pretty now.
The more promos that they release, the more excited I am for this show. I'm a sucker for
it's working because
drama comedies, but like this, like I am way more excited for this than I was kind of at the start here, and way less excited. The more I see of Andor, the more I just don't care.
Wow, you are really the opposite of me and most of the people I talk to. Yeah, that last Andor trailer I thought was fantastic. I'm really happy to see Tony Gilroy doing a Star Wars project again. That's going to be just not the same as everybody in front of these big real-time, hollow screen, environment things we've been getting, which I enjoyed. Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, and all that, and Mandalorian. But I am going to like this more naturalistic thing. This looks like a hard-boiled spy thriller, and I'm Jim. The comments have turned on Jim.
Janelle, what are you more excited for? Janelle, you more excited for She-Hulk or Andor?
Oh, She-Hulk. Easy.
Thank you. All right. So already on the show, 2-1, Kofi. Eat it.
Yeah. But they're totally different.
They're totally different. To my female correspondent and the guy who used to work at Marvel. That is a shocking outcome.
No. Look, Star Wars. It takes a lot for Star Wars to get me hooked, and Rogue One was fine. There is nothing here that I mean, will I watch it and will I maybe change my song and dance by the time I start? Yeah, sure. But it's like if the two were showing up on the same day, I'm watching She-Hulk first.
But, we know the way things work here. All of a sudden, we're gonna flash back, and you'll see.
I'll be the first to admit if it surprises me.
The comic book positivity when it doesn't matter if it's good or not.
But I'll tell you, there is nothing about it. There's nothing about it,
and everybody will be like, "That's how Star Wars goes these days. You just got to ride it. When it's popular, everybody will come back and be like." Hey, I'm wearing my Andor coat. I'm like, look at it.
I'm getting called out in the comments, Chris. Of course, Chanel's going to say She-Hulk. We all know I'm not like the biggest Star Wars fan, but I will say Rogue One was my favorite.
That was Jim's hustle, 3-card Monty hustle and bustle right there.
What?
Where the votes were like, I already know how this vote's going to go, but let's have a vote.
I'm so excited about both. I promise.
Okay, that's fine. I think you guys are crazy. That Andor trailer was fire. I'm in. Diego Luna alone.
I'm with
the
you.
The beginnings of the rebellion and the kind of hardcore beginnings of the rebellion are something I'm really kind of looking forward to. So,
the trailer was amazing. Stunning.
The point is that Disney and Marvel and Star Wars have also kind of learned a thing or two, I think, about how this content is supposed to be distributed, and they had to go back to the drawing board. So it's not just DC. Everybody's learning lessons on both sides of the fence, and that is a great place to take a break. Remember, subscribe to the Comic Book Nation YouTube channel, and we'll be back in a minute.
Mom, here, I'm leaving it right outside the door.
Hi, just your friendly Comic Book Nation host answering questions on our YouTube channel about how much I bench press. So we're back. Shout out to Mama Wheeler, who got a shout out in the background right there.
Hey, Mom.
Hey, Mom. But yeah, we're back. This is Comic Book Nation, your show that covers all things geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com. We just broke down all of the happenings at DC this week. So now we're going to settle down a bit and go into our kind of deep dive segment where we get into the kind of big releases of the week. And we are going to talk
are there so many.
Oh, yeah. It's a good time, guys.
It's a huge week.
Do you have any idea what it's like trying to be doing this show over the last couple of seasons where we've been like in a desert? Like every week, me, Janelle, and Matt would go out into the desert with these little taps and try to find any cacti we could for content stuff and get those little drips into these gourds. And then we'd have to run the gourds back here and put on a show for you guys. But now, look where we are.
We should do some
Yeah.
I've been living with Sandman for like almost 3 weeks now, like since the middle of July, since we got it for pre-Comic-Con, and like I'm about ready to watch it for like my 4th time. Like I freaking love that.
I'm going to tell you right up front, I am just now getting in the minutes of Sandman because my house has been crazy this week, but there are some great things we got to talk about. First up, let's talk about Prey movie. Prey, I'm calling it Prey movie. That stupid hashtag has gotten to me. Prey, the latest from the Predator franchise, is out on Hulu right now. And I got a chance to screen it early, in which thanks for that, because it took me a long time to log in and get my login all figured out, because Disney requires like biometrics and all kinds of stuff if you want to screen anything. So once I got that all figured out, it was like late at night earlier this week, and I just sat down. I was like, I guess I'll just check out 10 minutes of this and just see what it is. So like nearly 2 hours later, I got up and I was like, wow, man, that was like a Predator movie. So Prey, and I'm writing up a list for comicbook.com horror right now about ranking these Predator movies. I'm ranking this one, spoilers, right after the original Predator. I think it's a very close number 2.
Deserves it. I mean, it is great.
It is a great movie. Dan Trachtenberg, I mean, this guy who did 10 Cloverfield Lane, this man just takes genre properties and just takes them in, it just always so quietly. You never know these things are coming, but he just puts them out there in the world, and you're like, wow, this is actually a really good chapter of whatever franchise, even if it's only like loosely connected and like whatnot. But yeah, this is great. It's set back in, ancient America with this Comanche tribe and a female who wants to be a warrior, kind of old archetype, nothing new, but Amber Midthunder from Legion this is a really breakout role for her. There's an awesome dog, and we get this new Predator called the Prehistoric Predator, and basically it's a different level of weapons, all kind of more rudimentary Predator weapons, but yeah, it's just kind of a wilderness survival / sci-fi, not even sci-fi so much, but wilderness survival horror movie. And there are just some great sequences, great battle sequences. It's shot really well and beautifully, and it has the feel of that original Predator, meaning out in the wilderness, trying to survive while this thing is hunting you. But there are some distinct differences that make it also very novel and fun and new to watch for you. Yep. And the Native American culture stuff is just great. And they're a great protagonist because even in this ancient setting, they are, skilled warriors, skilled people of the land, and they're formidable opponents for a predator. And so that kind of balances things out in a way. And if you ever loved that scene in the original with Billy, right? Like in that whole storyline with Billy, this is just the Billy part, like extended into a whole movie. And I feel like that's what Trachtenberg and them saw. They were like, what was awesome about the original Predator? Fucking, I almost cursed for the first time. Billy was awesome. Like, and they were like, you know what? We need a whole movie like Billy. And this is what this is. And so, yeah, man, Prey is just,
there's a really interesting, cool through line, basically about like the, oh God, what the hell is it called? Now I was going to make a really cool point and about a thing in there, and I can't remember what, there's a very cool like food chain kind of through line through this thing.
Oh yeah, that's like those sequences are so great.
Yeah, and that I'm really excited for people to just kind of like experience and see, because I think it's just one of those things that helps bring another dimension to the movie. That and you can talk about this. The Predator in this looks really cool.
Yeah. Helmet's really dope, and the kind of change in the weapons is really dope. And like, yeah, it's a Predator with a shield. He goes Captain America on us, and like, yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's just a good example of how to understand these franchises in the root core of what made them fun. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like Predators was fine, but it like those generic characters and trying to get all complicated with the different Predator races and all that. Like in the sci-fi of it all, wasn't as good as just taking us back to this concept. So I think, this makes me believe in the Predator franchise again, because I still love Predator 2 for the fact of how different it is and the urban combat stuff in that, and some of the sequences like down on the subway or in the meat packing plant. Like Predator's the best when you're telling these kind of anthology style stories. Just one movie, set, simple premise. There's a bunch of people who are going at it. There's conflict or warriors. Predator comes down to test and see what your mettle is, and it's in different contexts.
I love that you say that, because that was my first Predator movie. This was it. Prey.
Oh yeah.
So I thought it was really great. I'm happy to know that it kind of represents like the first film, just in a different way, because now I know what I'm getting myself into when I watch the first one.
Oh no, you do not. No,
I don't.
No, I mean the first one is always going to be a classic because there's this element of 90s, just over the top 90s machismo, like testosterone action.
Love
Schwarzenegger at his best. That bicep gif with Carl Weathers when they're, there's just this thing about it. But it's also kind of funny because that's the turn of the movie, is these guys who are supposed to be like these alpha male guys coming up against something that just is, immediately rips them to shreds and leaves them like, oh, okay, well, maybe we're not as tough as we thought. And that was kind of the trick. This one does a different approach, of course, with this female character who, and it actually comes to a good thematic point of her real skill as a hunter being underestimated as a non-threat, and how this kind of resolves at the end was one of my favorite endings of a Predator movie ever. And it was really smart. And I was like, okay. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. So check out Prey.
I saw a comment somewhere that was basically like, this is like The Revenant meets Predator. And I'm like,
oh yeah. No, that's a perfect description.
That's a great
perfect. Spot on. It is spot on. The Revenant meets Predator. If you haven't seen The Revenant, I can only do that once, kind of like Requiem for a Dream, but awesome movie. So let's it's easy, right? Across the board, go watch Prey. It's on Hulu and it's at home, so like your weekend should be cool with at least one good movie. All right, and if you want something a little bit longer, and I'm on the geekier side, and this one could be a grenade, I don't know where we're gonna land on all this. Let's talk Paper Girls. So Paper Girls is an adaptation of a comic by Jim. Quick, you can say
Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chang.
Yeah, Cliff Chang. That's the one I was forgetting. I knew it was Vaughn, somebody else. But this is a kind of adaptation of that comic. And Jim, I know you were not very high up on this one, but I actually enjoy Paper Girls, not for the comic booky sci-fi concepts. I don't think I enjoy that. I think Paper Girls, and maybe it's just where I am in life now, but I think it really got into my head about this concept when it's about some paper girls who get sucked through time. And, they get sucked into different time periods into the future of their own futures. And they have to kind of, instead of the whole paradox thing, they actually have to confront their older selves for either help or just reference or, things like that. And I think for me, the hook of the show was that these kind of question of how would your younger self and your older self view one another, and what kind of reflections does that bring up about you as a person? And I thought that was like pretty insanely like good drama stuff that came out of that. The show had me actually emotional at several key points with just things that the characters were dealing with, always and usually in scenes with their alternate selves. And it was a pretty good sci-fi concept. And I thought that the show does a pretty good job of balancing that teen drama with adult drama, having some action fun and kind of sci-fi fun, and also having some kind of comic booky quirks to it. Mm-hmm. So somebody said it reminds them of Legion, and there is a good kind of comparison between Paper Girls and Legion. But I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it.
I'll let Janelle go first.
Jim, you're not gonna like it.
No.
I loved this, guys. I could not.
And Janelle, for reference, usually hates kind of teen coming of age drama stuff.
Stand the coming of age stuff. This for me had like a lot of heartfelt moments. No spoilers, but there's things that kind of tug at your heartstrings. And then of course, like the interactions between, future and past selves, and kind of the disappointment. Like you kind of, it took me to a place of like, if I was a kid looking at where I am right now, would I be proud of myself, or would I be kind of like, wow, like that's the route you took? Like how would I feel about myself? It made me actually think about that. But I thought it was such fun, and it really made me want to read the comics. Like it inspired me to read the comics. And I feel like that's always a win.
Yeah. And the casting in the show has some real, even newcomers, like the girl who plays Old Tiffany is like, she's just kind of starting out as an actress, and all of the kind of main characters, both the older and younger selves, are really excellent in this.
Yeah.
The girl who plays Mac is, really just
amazing.
Love. Sophia Rosinski, she's just great in this. And it was just really well done, on a modest little Amazon TV budget.
Can we say that Jim warned us that it wouldn't be good? So I went in going, this is gonna suck.
Yeah, Jim tried to fix this. I put this in and I wanted everybody to watch this for this week. And Jim here's my biggest
criticism of it. I think the story is great. The story it captures the essence of the comic series for what it is. But more and more, and I think this is probably more because I came off a high of watching Sandman and seeing how Sandman, we'll talk about it in a little bit. Sandman is such pulls so much of its look and atmosphere from the art of the original series that Cliff Chang's art is, to me, one of the best parts about the Paper Girls comics. And there is almost no touch of his style or any of that in this series. This could have been, and this looks like any generic sci-fi series that you would find on any streaming service or anywhere else. And that's that's the part that I really dislike about it. That kind of takes me out of it a little bit.
That's such a disingenuous comparison.
I don't think so.
I'm going to explain why. Sandman is a show that is clearly steeped in the aesthetic of its visuals, how it looks, the presentation. It's almost like a theater play, in thing. Paper Girls isn't going for the visual aesthetic. They're lighting scenes in purple. That's what we're working with, kind of quirky sci-fi. It's about the dramatic performances and the kind of character dynamics that this show is concerned with. So I don't think you can. There's apples and oranges.
I don't think so because you can show that there are other shows out there that do it very well. Umbrella Academy is another great example. That series.
What I'm saying is, visual aesthetic and stylistic and style over substance choices are weighed by every single creative, cinematic project. Some of them choose style more so on the scales. Here's substance, here's style.
And I feel like
some of them choose to go over here. Okay, but that's you as a comic nerd, not you as a mainstream viewer. We're not recommending this to just comic nerds. I'm recommending this to people who like kind of sci-fi shows coming of age shows or just weirdly unique shows, because this is a weirdly unique show. So I don't know, but you can hear, I think we can have both sides. Jim is saying, not pretty enough to live up to the comic. I'm saying I think the performances make it so it doesn't matter. You guys can take that as you will, but it is Paper Girls. It's on Prime Video. Some people in the comments were saying, what is this? Or we haven't heard about this, but Prime's just low key bubbling right now. They are doing the big Amazon or our Lord of the Rings type stuff, but they're also doing things like Reacher, Paper Girls, and other stuff like that are actually kind of quality genre shows, at least in my opinion. Jim, now we can go to something you can really delight in. I'm just getting into Sandman. I'm going to confess something I've never confessed in 13 years of my career publicly. But since this is here now, and I have Jim, my immediate manager, here, and it's on Paramount's dime, I can safely say, no, I'm just kidding. It's just, no, Jim's having a heart attack over there. No, it's just, I've never read Sandman. And it goes back to an ancient beef I have with Neil Gaiman that, made me swear off his work. But I'm not going to pick it up. But I've never read Sandman. So this is my first introduction to Sandman, period.
I haven't read Sandman in 10, 15 years, right? I enjoyed it when it came out, but did not think about it since, right? And so I had kind of forgotten a bit of Sandman, but there were the thing that I truly love about the show. You can take the first 2 volumes and it acts as a second screen reading companion for you. For this, that is how much of a straight adaptation that you get out of there. I have 2 pretty big criticisms of the show. The first 2 episodes drag a little bit, and the decision to to really draw some of that stuff out, I don't necessarily understand. But once you get past that and like and you meet Dream and the dreaming and you all that, like it goes. My other big thing is that this feels like 2 seasons in one, especially because it adapts the first 2 volumes of the series. When you get to what is very clearly the end of volume 1, which is that episode is quite possibly one of the best hours of television I have seen in a very long time. It's one of the best issue. It's one of the best single issues of the Sandman comic itself. It's the standalone death introduction. It's phenomenal. But when you go from that episode to the next episode that basically starts volume 2, it's a bit jarring. Like you could have easily have ended it there and like waited a month or so and then just go ahead and give us the last batch of episodes. That said, every single performance in this is so. Gwendolyn Christie as Lucifer is phenomenal. The casting in this is great. It looks really good. There are some moments where you can tell like it's a bit green screeny, but like I said, like I went back as soon as I kind of recognized some moments. I went back, I pulled out my comics, and I just kind of was reading along. The dialogue is ripped right out of the page, and it works really well. Sometimes it's like comic dialogue is usually overwrought because it's a reading experience, not necessarily an auditory one. The guy, Tom Storage, who plays the dream, is great. Like I said, I'm going on like my third watch through of this, and I'm really excited for people to see it. There are some pretty big changes though, and it's not necessarily a spoiler to say this. One surprise was there's no DC logo in front of this show. It's just a Warner Brothers Television logo. And at that point, every DC reference that was in the book, characters, etc., have all been replaced with something else. And it's not a bad thing. The Sandman always kind of sat on the fringe, and it almost felt like they had to put DC characters into it to make it feel like the series was more important. You don't need those characters. Like, I mean, it's like Etrigan and characters like that you don't need in a way, they said. But like I said, I loved this show. I was totally I thought I was going to enjoy it. I did not expect to love it. And I need more ASAP now. I feel like there's not enough.
All right. Janelle, did you have any initial reactions?
I'm just really excited about this. I actually had a community member from my Twitch community send me all of the Sandman comics. So I haven't touched it yet because I know that I'm visiting my family, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to give this the time and energy that I want. I feel like I'm going to love this. I'm going to warn you, the comics can be a bit dense at times. Okay.
There's
Yay.
It's early-ish Neil Gaiman where he's a bit he overwrites it a bit. But once it gets rolling, I think you'll enjoy it. And the first couple of issues that have Sam Keith on art are just really, really good. But
this looks
I think I'm really curious to see what you think. But there's also, and there's one other little bit too that I do want to mention. There is a bit from some of the expanded Sandman stuff that they've done, some of the Sandman sequel stuff they've done, which kind of acts like a prologue from the now I'm blanking on the name of it, but there's some of the more recent stuff that Neil did with DC, kind of sets up a bunch of things in the very beginning of the first episode that is different. That is not the kind of the one-to-one, but totally worth it. Anyway, go watch it and talk to me about it. I need more people to talk to about it.
All right, Sandman. Like I said, I'm just jumping into this, but so far, so good. I'm not going to speak. I think next week when Matt's back, we're going to go into full reactions to the series once everybody's obviously had a time to kind of watch it all. You know how Netflix goes. So next week, be sure you're here because we are going to get deep into what Sandman was all about with more full spoilery talk. But for right now, that's Jim's recommendation. It's pretty glowing. Let's move to comics, and we're going to get through comics at a good clip here so we can save some time for wrestling, because of course we cover all things geek culture, and we are based in Nashville. Comic Book Nation is based in Nashville, and this past weekend we hosted a little event you might have heard of if you're a wrestling fan called SummerSlam. So crazy things happen. Jim and a special guest are coming on to talk about it, but first let's talk about our comics of the week, starting with Batman 126. So, Batman 126 from Chip Zdarsky is a kind of interesting new twist in what is happening in Batman's story. It sets up an interesting new antagonist, and it was a pretty brutal issue all in all, right? And it has a kind of twist ending that had me scratching my head, but luckily I still have Matt Aguilar around as a resource. So I found out that there is a whole part of Batman lore I had never actually kind of known about. So let's get into that. So Batman, there's this crazy new android thing that kind of springs up in this and we say all the time here, we like issues that are kind of blessedly simple but have deeper kind of character implications as well. And Chip Zdarsky has been doing such a great job with that other Batman series we're reading. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. Why is Matt not here? But I'm blanking on the name. What is it that we read? The one with the whole story of how Batman trained to become Batman that we're reading right now.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Yeah, and
he's
so
gone
good
through all the phases.
The Night, yes. Brywood, thank you, Brywood. Yes. Batman, the Night. We're loving that series, and so. This is kind of the same thing. This is not a new thing. It's this android that has all this fancy technology, including a meso technology, shows up on the scene. It starts kicking the crap out of Batman, and Batman's just trying to survive, right? And to survive, he has to go to some pretty extreme lengths and get some help from the Bat family, who take a pretty good beating in this as well. But in the midst of that simple premise, it reflects a lot of interesting characteristics of Batman and of the Bat family and their real kind of connection to each other. And we get this kind of crazy comic book ending spoiler that has Bruce Wayne too injured to kind of continue. And to keep Batman in the fight, he has to access that little failsafe he didn't know Grant Morrison put in his mind to become Batman of Zur-En-Arr. Did I say that?
Yes, yes, you did. Zur-En-Arr.
Yeah. Zur-En-Arr. And so, that's what's going to be going down now. So like I said, I think Chip is doing a great job with
Batman. It to Chip Zdarsky to bring back the Batman of Zur-En-Arr.
Yeah.
It
but
is
in an
100% in his wheelhouse. But it's one of those things that I think Chip does very well, because the Batman of Zur-En-Arr, while an older concept, was only made more confusing by Grant Morrison. And so I'm very curious to see what Chip does to kind of untangle that lore a bit and see how it goes into play here.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting to see this. I think it's interesting to see because, settling into this just as the most simplistic thing, as this kind of fail-safe Bruce has worked into his mind for if he's ever mind controlled or kind of incapacitated or whatever, so that Batman essentially still functions, is an interesting concept. And it feels like something crazy Bruce Wayne would go out and train and do. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. Now, having this character fight against a machine that ostensibly you would assume is loaded with data about how Batman operates, what he fights like, and all of that, in showing what happens when Batman kind of departs from that, and maybe having Bruce come out of that and maybe learn a thing or two from Batman of Zur-En-Arr. I mean, that could work. But it is a crazy ending, and I didn't know what the hell was happening, and I had to ask Matt and said, what is this suit? And so, I think the more interesting thing was I missed this whole thing about this alternate personality, but I missed a lot of Grant Morrison stuff. And me and Jim have already had that fight on the side, so we're not going to recruit
not a fight. I mean, that's I suffered through that era of Batman. That was
I just said no. So Janelle, did you enjoy this book?
I really did. I very much enjoy this. I love the way that he draws violence. I loved the fight.
Jorge. Shout out to Jorge Jimenez, who draws. Oh man, these pictures are beautiful.
Gorgeous
and like Janelle said,
artwork.
That's a Janelle statement in itself. I love how he draws violence.
But
but you are not wrong. No lies detected. So beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was really
work.
something that I very much enjoyed, and I want to keep going with it. Especially, I'm Kofi. When you sent the message, like, I need to understand what's going on with this suit. Same. I was like, I don't understand what's happening here. But it doesn't matter because I was so intrigued and interested.
And that's the point of comics, right? Because inevitably every comic's going to be someone's first comic. If this was the first one and all of a sudden there's this crazy Batman at the end, like, you just got to wait till the next one.
You're like, I got to know what this is.
you wait till the next one. And then if the writer does their job, or the creators do their job, then they'll explain it in a way that makes sense. And I've got full faith in this team to do so. So
heck yes.
I'm excited to see the next issue.
Yeah.
All right. Next up was Moon Knight, which was very much about bringing back these personas of Mark Spector. I mean, it's kind of synchronizing with the TV show a little bit, which was bringing in Stephen Grant and Jake Lockley in a kind of different sense. And the one we kind of are hoping for Moon Knight season 2, ironically, which is to see this unification of Moon Knight. And this issue kind of deals with Mark Spector's internal beef as he's getting the crap kicked out of him. And I think this comic is still wonderful, and I'm loving it.
Dude, the setup and structure for this issue, where it's a Moon Knight Mark Spector as Moon Knight is fighting these two new villains that are introduced at the end of the previous issue, while he is having a conversation with Steven and Jake, like, in his head. And you're seeing that kind of like juxtaposition of the conversation he's having. And it's a legit, like, deep conversation in the sense that they're all like, look, you have gotten yourself into too much trouble. You need our help. Stop being selfish. Give our, let us give you help, kind of thing. And Mark is like, I don't need your help. I'm fine. Blah, blah, blah. I've already made it this far, or whatever. All while he is getting his butt beat by these two new, like, it starts out like it looks like he's being able to handle them, but he inevitably starts getting his butt beat. Obviously, Hunter's Moon and Tiger show up at the end to kind of save the day. And at the end, he's just like, yeah, you're right. You know what? Yes, I do need help. We do need to work together. And it's a thing where it's the kind of storytelling that comics can do so well. And that's why I love comics so much. I'm sure they would find some way to do this really cool on TV or whatever. But when it's shown, when the way it's presented in comics is just, I just love it. This team is just crushing it.
I accidentally, that was so weird. I thought you muted because I'm wearing these Bluetooth headphones and I hit accidentally Siri on my phone. I guess it's connected and like you just went out. And I was like, oh my God, I can't hear. Oh man, technology. All right. Well, that's going to do it for comics this week. We had a poll book. Apologies, but I have to go. There's something, this week has been really berserk for me, and it is still continuing. Apparently a teacher shortage is causing an emergency shutdown of my kid's school. So that's not like nothing's in danger, but I have to leave right now and go get a child out of school because my wife is down in the bed with COVID, and it's been that kind of week. So
oh no.
Want to say shout out to all our Comic Book Nation listeners. This is our show. There's a lot of stories. One day we just got to tell all the stories about what things that have happened during these shows that we have had to surf through, because those are hilarious stories. But Jim is here, thankfully, and he's going to wrap. And we have a special guest coming on for some wrestling talk in the form of Mr. Connor Casey. So it's a wash. We're not even on a loss here. I'm out. Thank you guys. Subscribe to Comic Book Nation YouTube, and I will see you guys next week. But I got a jet. Have a good rest of the show.
Later, Kofi.
All right.
Thanks,
excellent.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks, Jim.
Welcome, Connor.
What's going on, guys?
Look, this. For folks who don't know, or I mean, if you're a listener to the show, you do know. But obviously, a lot of change coming to the world wrestling entertainment. Vince McMahon is out. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon are in, and it has not been like there was a bit trepidatious, I think, in that we weren't sure how fast we were going to see Triple H-esque touches to the show, considering that like this is SummerSlam is a show that has been booked for a while. Yes, there are some things that can change, but usually that stuff happens on like a Raw or SmackDown kind of basis, right? Like those last minute changes and things like that. Not necessarily for what is arguably their second biggest domestic show of the year, which is SummerSlam, right? And so we're going into this. Vince is out, Triple H is in. What's going to happen? And man, I admit I was a bit sour on this card going in. I had a few things that I was excited about, a few matches I was excited about, but I did not expect to enjoy the show as a whole as I did. And I got to tell you, there is nothing like seeing wrestling live in person. It is an experience unlike no other. If you ever have the opportunity, even if it's a small regional show or whatever, you have to go do it. And so I'm going to say that has probably, I'm viewing SummerSlams through those rose tinted glasses. But when you see someone like Brock Lesnar lift up a ring using a tractor in person, that is a moment that I would imagine, I have to imagine that people who were in the audience for Stone Cold Steve Austin's beer truck, Kurt Angle's milk truck. Anytime the tank has made its way out to the ring or anything crazy like that, that is a moment you do not forget at all. And so to be there for a moment like that is clearly going to be shown in replays and best ofs and things like that for years to come was truly a special moment. But like this card was full of surprises, full of great matches, and I think it delivered. Connor, what do you think?
So I'll start off just by saying this is my first time on the show since the before times. The great change has happened since then. The leadership change from Vince McMahon to Triple H. As for this show, I viewed it kind of like I viewed the Raw from Madison Square Garden that took place earlier that week, and it was that, Triple H is here and we can start looking for the small tweaks to the presentation. But we also knew that this show was booked by Vince McMahon mostly. And if you look at the show itself, if you told me everything with the exception of Bayley and Io Sky and Dakota Kai's arrival, if you told me Vince had booked out that entire show, I kind of would have believed you.
Sure.
This felt very much like hey, this main event wasn't our first choice, but we need to have something that, makes it worth watching. So let's do something absolutely insane with the tractor. Let's have Becky and Bianca go out and give us another 20-minute banger. I think the show was hurt by losing Seth versus Riddle, even though we still got that segment. Not having
that was a weird low point.
It was, and not having that match. When you kind of looked at this card, you went, "Oh, it's all rematches and 2 celeb matches again. So why am I excited?"
Yeah.
But no, it really did deliver. And I think that the changes we're all kind of looking for, we've already seen them with this week's Raw. I haven't cared about the United States Championship this much since John Cena held it 7 years ago. I haven't cared about Tommaso Ciampa this much since he and Johnny Gargano were fighting 4 years ago. And he did all that in one 3-hour show that I would argue was the best Raw we've seen since the pandemic started.
Yeah, I mean, they're like the rehab of the U.S. title, I think is going to be incredibly important to the secondary titles are the titles that need it the most. Hopefully the rehab of the Intercontinental title means that we get a new Intercontinental belt, because that is quite possibly one of the worst design belts I have ever seen. It looks like a bad backyard wrestling fed belt. I hate it. It's terrible.
Fair enough. It's hard to compare when the original is so iconic.
That's so iconic.
Yeah.
Right. Even like the one, I call it the Jericho era Intercontinental belt. Like that's not a bad belt either, right? Like give me something in between that, not whatever the heck we have now.
It's too pointy. That's my issue.
It really is. I think, look, there's a lot of talk. Peter's in the chat causing some trouble. There's a lot of question marks on like, does Roman still need the belt? And quite honestly, I think he does, because I don't know if there's anyone else yet who is ready to get the kind of rub you would get from Roman dropping the belt. Cody is very much the clear heir apparent in this. I did not think it was going to be Theory. Look, I love what Theory is doing, but it wouldn't make sense for him to win the belt at this time. I think he's going to be a great champion one day, and it's going to be it. But now is not necessarily the time. I think we're kind of in that holding pattern. I think it needs to be Cody to be the one to then get the belt and make kind of the next run for it. I don't know who else you have, right? Like Seth gains nothing because he's already lost enough to Roman to make it seem like Roman dropping the belt has to be a clean drop. Yeah. And the only way you can do that is by setting him up with an opponent that he has not really had anything to do with yet. And like I said, Roman has said it himself. He's done it in promos. He's gone through everybody. With the exception of him dropping a belt to someone like The Rock at a WrestleMania next year, right? Like if they were to do that, which I don't think they would do that. And it's one of those things where I think Roman keeps the belt until his match with The Rock, if that happens at WrestleMania, and only then does he lose it to Cody Rhodes. I don't think he can lose it to Cody Rhodes before he beats The Rock, because I think that is the missing piece to the Roman legacy that needs to happen. But the big question mark now is with Cody Rhodes out is who do you feed Roman to next that you genuinely think has a shot? I love Drew McIntyre. I don't think it's Drew McIntyre. And it's not, honestly, sorry, I'll let you talk in a second because I've got one more last one there. Like sure. one other person, like I would have rather have seen Sheamus win over Drew for that match, because Sheamus is not someone who, his former world title holder is not someone who's really gone toe to toe with Roman since he's been in this. And so he's someone you presumably can do a program with for a month or two, get some, DQ wins or something, or count out wins or something else, but he's someone who's been kept far enough away from Roman during his reign that could go to a program before they set someone else, up left. And that's probably one of the biggest problems / question marks that I think Triple H and company are going to have to figure out, because of all the existing stuff that has happened during Roman and his time with the belt.
So, bit of a shameless plug here, but I'm going to mention the column I wrote the Monday that it was announced Triple H became head of creative. I'd spent about 2,000 words kind of breaking down the situation he was inheriting. And to describe it as a mess, I think is being charitable, but it's accurate. Yeah. And one of the big issues that I mentioned that he was inheriting is that world championship picture. And then you've got this weird situation where Roman's your top guy. He's been your top guy. Whoever takes him down is made. But we seem to be banking on whether or not the film schedule of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has an open spot somewhere in April.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the best situation to put yourself in. It's also left Raw pretty much without momentum.
Championless.
It's championless. It's without momentum. Like I said, I love what they did with the United States title picture this week, but you've still got 3 hours of Raw to fill each week, and that's not really enough. And Raw without Roman has been hurting. Yeah. And I think there's a way you can fix it at Clash at the Castle. And Jim, I know you don't think
Drew gets one belt.
I think it's more like Drew beats Roman, because here's what we got to understand is that the crowd you saw at SummerSlam, I'm pointing at the stadium, it's in the screen. The crowd you saw at SummerSlam was about was a little over 40,000.
Yeah.
A month ago, they had already sold 60,000 tickets for Cardiff.
Yeah, it's going to be a big crowd.
It's going to be massive, and Scottish fans will travel to see Drew. Right. I think the sheer reaction of him taking down Roman over in the UK, it'll be comparable to when Bulldog took down Brad in 92.
Oh, for sure. I think you can give Drew the win. I just don't know. You can't give him a belt.
But I think here's the next step. You have Drew come out that next week and say, okay, it's time to split these two titles again.
Yeah.
And have him take the WWE Championship, go to Raw, and then figure out what to do with the Universal Championship. And if that's Roman being like, okay, now I'm pissed that y'all took this from me. If it's
Yeah.
Seth sneaking in there and saying, hey, you technically only beat me by disqualification. If it's Sheamus going, hey, I've been a walking G1 climax for the past 2.5 years. Give me some love. Like there's some like you can have some real excitement suddenly on SmackDown as opposed to just, hey, Roman's going to show up once a month. We're just going to spin our wheels until then. I think Hunter recognizes that it's kind of this. What we did at WrestleMania 38 was a great visual, but it's kind of a mistake.
Sure. I had a theory in that, like, if he was going to cash in, look, WWE changes the rules and makes up the rules whenever they want, but that the cash in can only be for one belt.
Ooh.
It can't be for both. Roman just happens to have both, but like the cash in can only be for one belt. And obviously, since Theory is on Raw, he would go for the Raw belt to be the champion of Raw. Obviously, that didn't happen. I still think that is a potential option for them to keep in their back pocket. Or if not, right? Peter mentions it in the chat too. Again, Drew went over Brock. Drew going over Roman kind of falls in line, keeps Drew strong, still keeps Roman strong.
They had a great match at Survivor Series a couple years ago, and that one had an ending note of, yeah, this really could have gone either way.
Right. Yeah. And then if anything, you can have Drew in Theory start, doing a thing.
My thing with Theory is that he is legitimately great. And for the folks that are like, hey, he kind of sucks, go watch his stuff in Evolve. Go watch his stuff in The Way with Johnny Gargano. Like he really has talent.
He's really good.
And they were able to recognize that. It's not just that Vince thought he looked like a young John Cena. There's more there. The thing I think that they can do with him is you've got two options. You can either have him swindled out of the title, a la what they did with Otis and Miz, or you have him cash in and just get trampled. And then you suddenly build a character arc where it's, hey, I had everything handed to me. And suddenly the guy that was my biggest backer is gone. And then when I try to do it on my own, I completely failed. Yeah. That feels like the start of a character arc.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it matures him in a way that will inevitably be needed. Because right now he's still very much, I'm the youngest this, I'm the youngest that, selfie this, selfie that. And I think this giving him a bit of a chip on his on his shoulder helps mature that character a bit. Anyway, all in all, because I know we've got to wrap on time for a little bit. Triple H era looking like it was showing some promise. I don't expect any real full changes for another like 60-ish days once we really start getting a lot of this stuff, dropping some of the old stuff, and making some of the new stuff happen. I'll tell you what, there's one person who should be absolutely terrified of Triple H now in power. That's Tony Khan, because now, look, Tony Khan was fighting against someone who everyone said is on the decline. And I think that playing field has leveled a bit. And I think it now makes upcoming contract negotiations for Tony a lot harder because they know the kind of treatment that they may get if inevitably they go back. And it probably makes it more expensive for him as well. I think this will show the true test of AEW, I believe, to seeing how they handle a Triple H run creative.
I am the AEW defender in this office. I am well aware of that status. But I think they'll be fine, as Tony has pointed out publicly. Like, all the guys that you think are suddenly going to go running back to WWE now,
they're all locked
contract for a long time.
They're locked up,
and he recognizes that. I think their product was they were on the back foot a bit, simply because of all the injuries that have plagued that roster.
Sure.
The New Japan crossover event the show itself was great, but it's kind of it's hard to set up. Hey, here's an entire new promotion you've never watched.
Right.
Here's 3 weeks of TV to try to explain who these people are. Half of them can't speak English. Yeah. We're leading up to All Out. All Out last year was their best show, hands down.
Yep.
If Punk is back, that's a fantastic step forward. They're finally moving ahead with the Undisputed Elite storyline, which that they're heavily invested in. The last couple of Dynamites have just been legitimately great. I think they will be fine. Their big concern right now is, and it was talked about earlier in this episode, everything with Warner Brothers Discovery. and where they fit in Zaslav's equation.
Mhm.
That's their real concern, because if they lose that, they got to find somewhere else for TV, or else their money dries up quickly.
Yep, for sure. All right, Janelle, thank you for listening to our wrestling talk.
Of course, I love it. I do. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. I learned things.
This is the part of the show where we do all the sales pitch, basically, right? Like, look, if you love this show and you're thinking to yourself, hey, how do I support the show? How can I pay back the hours of enjoyment and content that the crew behind Comic Book Nation give me on a weekly basis, week in, week out, for 3-4 seasons running, right? Easy ways to do it. I'll lay it all out for you. First way, go on. If you're listening right now on iTunes, if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, just like while I'm talking, leave a 5-star review. Explain why you love the show. We love reading them out on the show. Gives you a nice little rub. We're back in the office now. Things are starting to get way more normal. We are looking to ship some shirts, baby. And I know folks are waiting. There is something coming. I can't really say what in a month that people that people are going to love. And when it happens, you'll see it. You'll know it. It'll be so blatantly obvious. But anyway, get those reviews in. 5 stars. We'll read them on the air. Give you a rub, and thank you for supporting the show. Other ways to get involved: follow us on Twitter at Comic Book Nation, at Comic Book Now. Follow the YouTube channel Comic Book Nation. Follow the main Comic Book YouTube channel. We do 2 other shows. We do Phase Zero, Marvel show. You love Marvel stuff? That is the show to watch every Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Look, if you're a Pokemon fan, we got a show for you too. I do that one on Monday. A Wild Podcast has appeared. Why not check that one out? Same times, same places. Just go do it. If you've got friends who love this stuff, friends who love geek stuff and like really need you, and you need them to talk about the things we talk about, send them this link. You had a Facebook group or something with some friends about who love geek stuff. Just drop them a link. Say, hey, this is a show I listen to. It's great. I think you'll enjoy it. You should listen to it too. Listen to it together. Make it a communal experience. Be part of the chat. We do this show live, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. YouTube.com/Comic Book Nation. Twitch.tv/Comic Book. There are the chat faithful. I'm going to chat some of them out now. Norin is rad. Superboy 2K6. Demon of 9. There's just a few of the people. Damon Streams, right? These are all folks who are in the chat who keep us honestly, right? They're like the show's fact checkers in a way, honestly. They call us out when we say something wrong, and they give us a little praise when we say something right. Look, for our egos, it's everything.
We need it.
Otherwise, you can follow each and every one of us individually on Twitter. I'm at Jim Biscardi. Janelle is at Janelle Wheeler. Connor Casey is at Connor Casey CB. We love to hear from you. We'd love to look if I said something that offended you, or if I said something that did not offend you. Let me know. Let's get into it. I'm more than happy to talk about it. That's one of the great things about this. We can have nice, civil conversations about the things that we love. That's why we are fans of this stuff. That's why we come to the table. And that's going to do it for us this week. I have done all of the salesmanship. I have done all the selling. The only thing left, that it is now in your hands. The power is yours. Okay. We hope you have a good weekend. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Kofi will be back. Matt will be back. Connor and I we only show up when they need us. But
we always need you.
That's right. But again, everyone have a great week. We really do appreciate it. And like I said, keep on keeping on. Catch you later, folks.